Happy Friday afternoon and welcome to Sports Beat Live, Chiefs Training Camp Edition. We are here to talk Chiefs with you. Send us your questions and comments and we will answer them. We're here with Jesse Newell. Jesse, how you doing?
Doing great, Blair. Nice day outside. Figured we'd take us people out to St. Joseph, Missouri, and the campus of Missouri Western. Reminds me a lot of home, where I grew up in Emporia. Hung around Emporia State, another Division II program a lot. So here you go. Here's the beautiful campus right here in the background.
MIAA rivals, Emporia State and Missouri Western.
That is them.
So, yeah, we are, like I said, we're here to talk Chiefs with you. We just wrapped up the third day of training camp, full team, right? The veterans are here, the rookies, everybody is here in St. Joe, and they will practice again tomorrow, same time, and then take Sunday off and resume on Monday. I thought today, Jesse, we would do something we haven't done this week, and that is just start by talking about what we saw on the field today. There are some issues that we're going to get to later in the show, but you know, it was a big crowd out there today, several thousand, 3,000 or 4,000, I suspect. Big crowd, nice day, and they got to see a lot of drills, a lot of 7-on-7, 11-on-11, and we've had this conversation before when you're during OTAs, when you're watching these types of practices, what you really can't evaluate are defensive line play, offensive line play. You really see a lot of the passing game. You can't really even evaluate what's going on in the running game, except for maybe the order in which they are taking the snaps. And so, as was the case back a month and a half or so ago during OTAs, we'll talk a lot about what we saw in the passing game today. So I'll start it off by saying a lot of again, a lot of 7-on-7, 11-on-11 drills. Saw some terrific catches today and saw a few drops as well that were kind of head shaking. But what was, from your perspective, kind of the best plays and the best moments of today's practices?
Yeah, it's made it easy for us these first 3 days. There's been one diving catch from a receiver that kind of has stood out as the highlight reel play. Juju Smith-Schuster had the first two days, and today it was Skyy Moore on a route with the second team coming against Najee Johnson and a fellow rookie. But this was kind of the Skyy Moore day today. He showed out in a few ways. Patrick Mahomes talked about him afterwards. Andy Reid did. I thought Mahomes' comments were pretty interesting, though, with this. And I think this is kind of a major theme of what the Chiefs are going to be facing here throughout the course of the entire season, which is Patrick Mahomes said, hey, he's great. You look at his body. Everybody's talking about the quad life for Skyy Moore. He's got these big legs you can see when they don't have the pads on. And when he's wearing shorts, you kind of see, Tyreek Hill was built in sort of the same way with the really big, thick legs. And Andy Reid's talked about that. But, to make these plays, Patrick Mahomes said, Skyy Moore looks great. You can tell he's thinking out there. They're throwing the whole playbook at him. They're trying to get him going with this whole thing. But right now, it's still a process of getting caught up. And we know he missed part of OTAs with that hamstring injury. And again, that's kind of a theme of the whole offense, I think, is that Patrick Mahomes has had receivers the last few years with Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Demarcus Robinson, Byron Pringle that have been here a long time and that sort of knew him and knew what he wanted. This year, it's just different. They've been trying to go down to Texas to get everything going together so they can be on the same page. But we even heard Andy Reid kind of unprompted talk about this today, is that how quickly can you get up to speed with these guys? How quickly can this offense gel in the season where these first 5-6 games are all going to be coin flip type games, and you need to win those right away. Skyy Moore, I think you kind of put him in that group with Juju, with Marquez Valdes-Scantling, to say how much are they going to suffer early in the season just by not being with Patrick Mahomes a full season like these other guys were. But I thought Skyy Moore stood out today. You talked about a drop. Josh Gordon made a drop. He's kind of on that roster fringe when they're looking at 6 wide receivers. So something he needs to avoid moving forward. But another two touchdown catches from Marquez Valdes-Scantling in the red zone. Patrick Mahomes also threw another one to Juju Smith-Schuster. So I'd say so far in camp, Juju has been the story, again, from what we can watch with 7-on-7s. He's been the guy that's been the most impressive. But the receivers have been good. And then Willie Gay had interception, which, if we're being honest with ourselves, 7-on-7s are not fair to the defense. They're not fair to the defenders. So anytime they do make a play and return it for a touchdown like Willie Gay did and got the crowd all hyped up, that's worth noting as well. But I would say, again, this was another day with a receiver standing out with a particular catch, and Skyy Moore, and some discussion about how quickly he can get going, and if he can get going quickly, how much his talent can shine.
All right, so let's hear what Patrick Mahomes had to say about Skyy Moore's day.
Patrick, what are your thoughts so far on Skyy Moore? How do you feel like he can really contribute to this offense?
Yeah, I mean, he's a tough player. He's a smaller as far as height, but he's thicker as far as a receiver. And I think you see that he's making a lot of tough contested catches over the middle. He's thinking a lot because, he's a rookie getting thrown into the offense, and we're not holding back at all. But you can tell when he knows what he's doing. He runs some great routes, has great releases, and I think it'll be could be a big part of our offense moving forward.
Good stuff from Patrick Mahomes. Hey, Jordan asks, and this may play into what we're talking about, Jesse, which side do you think will have more struggles early, offense or defense? I'll tell you what, I came into training camp thinking one side, and after a few days here, I'm not so sure. I came into camp thinking defense, and because you look you're going to see offense with its successes here in training camp. It's just built to be that way until the pads come on. But the more I think about Patrick Mahomes having to get comfortable with a new set. We talk about Tyreek Hill, but also not here at Demarcus Robinson and Byron Pringle, and there were just it's a new cast of targets for Patrick Mahomes. He says he's and Andy Reid said this as well. They're getting they're using this time to get on the same page. They spent a ton of time together in the summer, in Texas, working out together. So I don't know. What do you say about that? Offense or defense?
It's a really good question. Both is probably the answer, and that's not a great answer for Chiefs fans, right? I just talked about it. You wish if this was like a college football type of schedule, a KU football type of schedule, that you'd start with one AA school and then two patsies to start with, and then get your Big 12 play going. But that's not how the Chiefs open up. They got to be good right away. I think there's different challenges because, again, what you have in Patrick Mahomes, so that's comforting. What you have in the offensive line, that's comforting. But I think for the Chiefs at receiver, there's so much that they do that they were successful with, which is Patrick Mahomes being on the same page with the guys around him. And so that's going to take some time. It's going to take some continuity, those guys being together. And I think you can't really rush time. You know what I mean? It's not something you can. You can try in the offseason. You can have these workouts. I think that was a very positive thing for Patrick to put together and for those guys to get together. But it's something that has to develop. I think defensively, the questions are different, which is so many young players. When they traded Tyreek Hill, they got all these draft picks, and they used a lot of high draft picks on defensive players, but they got to play those guys. George Karlaftis is going to have to play for the Chiefs. Trent McDuffie's going to have to start for the Chiefs. Brian Cook is going to be in there early on. They've been really impressed, and we've all been really impressed by Joshua Williams so far, their 4th round draft pick. So maybe that gives you some confidence that some of these young guys can't step in right away. But I know Sam McDowell, this is his favorite topic, and he even had Steve Spagnuolo kind of pushing back against him a little bit yesterday when he was bringing up this issue or this topic at least. But yeah, Steve Spagnuolo, he's hesitated in the past to play young players in his scheme or to trust them. But this year he has no other options. And there has been talk in the past like, hey, his scheme can be complex. It can be difficult. It can be something that is very taxing to learn. And yet you got to have these guys play right away and have them ready for week one. And you got to depend on them from week one. So I do think that is going to be a major part of this Chiefs season, is wondering, can they tread water in those first few weeks when the defense is coming together, when they have rookies on the field, and when the offense is still figuring things out, and Patrick Mahomes is trying to get on the same page as those receivers. So the answer is probably both. Again, that's not probably the best answer for Chiefs fans to hear, but if they can survive that early part of the schedule then and be around 500, then I think the rest of the way could be good, because they should be one of those teams that should be ascending toward the end of the season.
Yeah, I would add Leo Chanel to that list too of rookies on the defensive side that are going to get a lot of playing time. They just are. Chanel's he's not with the first team, obviously, but with Willie Gay and Nick Bolton, but he's right there with the seconds, right? And gets he's going to be part of the rotation at linebacker. And it's funny you mentioned the schedule. I can remember the week or so before the NFL released its schedule, the rumor was that the Chiefs were going to open up against the Houston Texans. And I just remember thinking at the time, oh, that's a great one to open with. That'll be perfect for the Chiefs. Texans aren't supposed to be very good this year.
That's their 1AA opponent. If you had the Chiefs, that's it. Okay, that's their Sam Houston State or whatever.
That's right. Turns out it won't be the Houston Texans. They'll appear later on the schedule. It will be the Arizona Cardinals. That look, a playoff team a year ago, and probably disappointed with the way the playoff game ended for them, and a motivated Arizona team in week one for the Chiefs. So, okay. Hey, Jesse, there's a couple other topics I want to talk to you about, but let's take a break here and we will discuss some comments from Clark Hunt, who spoke today at training camp, and also from General Manager Brett Veach. So we'll be back right after this.
When I bought my first home, I was searching for listings and negotiating all on my own. Now I'm back in the housing market and I could not imagine doing that again. But then I found First Federal Bank of Kansas City's expert loan advisors at ffbkc.com. They were kind, knowledgeable, and available 24/7. My loan advisor answered my questions and helped me feel confident all the way through closing. I trust First Federal Bank because they understand banking is personal. Apply today for a home loan at ffbkc.com/homes. First Federal Bank of Kansas City. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Back on Sports Beat Live with Jesse Newell at Chiefs Training Camp. And I should have said this at the top. I forgot, but really appreciate our sponsor, First Federal. And they'll be with us throughout training camp as well. Okay, Jesse, like I said, we heard from Clark Hunt today, Chiefs chairman and CEO. And we don't, he doesn't speak publicly often, handful of times a year. So when he does, we're always very interested in what he has to say, and often the topics vary widely just because we don't get to talk to him that often. So it's not unusual for us to talk to him about World Cup soccer coming to Kansas City and just various issues. But so we're going to run a clip of Clark Hunt here, and in that clip we're going to hear a couple things. I asked our editors to include two different topics. The first one has to do with it was his response to a question about uniforms, and helmets. You know how that's been a topic here, a trending topic in the last week with alternate and throwback type of uniforms and helmets. And he was asked about that. We're going to play a clip of that, and that's going to roll into questions that our Sam McDowell asked about the future of the Chiefs' home stadium. So let's do this, Monty. Let's go ahead and play Clark Hunt. He's going to speak first about the tradition of the Chiefs uniforms and helmets, and that's going to segue into the topic of the Chiefs' future stadium.
I think, a fan, no matter where they are, whether in the United States or now overseas, when they see the red and gold, they know exactly what team that is. And I think that's just very important for the brand.
Last time we spoke to you on the stadium stuff, you guys were beginning stages of a study to figure out, the current composition of it that needed to be rebuilt. I just wondered what the early findings so far and what the process is right now.
Yeah, that process is ongoing. We're very hopeful that we'll be able to renovate Arrowhead when the time comes, but we're probably still, a year plus away from being able to make that determination. What I've learned through the process is it's not a very simple answer when you're trying to make a decision about whether a building can go another 25 or 30 years starting in 8 years from now. So we're being very methodical about it. We want to get to the right answer because it's very important.
I just want to make sure I understood that, but you're hopeful that you would be able to just stay there and renovate the current structure of the building?
Yes, that would be our number one priority. We're going to evaluate all options. Obviously, we've got to figure out what's best for the franchise, what's best for the fan base, but it starts with evaluating Arrowhead, and that's where we are right now.
Okay, first of all, this press conference was not being held at an elementary school playground, but all that noise in the back is we're not too far. The interview tent is not too far from where Chiefs players sign autographs. And with as many fans that were out there today, you're going to hear the same thing tomorrow. There were just a lot of kids out there asking Chiefs players for autographs, and that's the that's the background noise that you heard. So let's just touch really quick on the uniform trends, Jesse. It's such a thing on social media. It was big this week because I guess it was unveiled. Some teams are going to have the alternate looks, the Bengals with the white helmets and so on. So Mark Donovan was asked about earlier this week, and Clark Hunt today. The sense that I get is don't hold your breath waiting for the Chiefs to roll out a white or a gold or a black helmet or uniforms that stray very far from the red and the white that the Chiefs have always worn.
Yeah, they seem to love that tradition, and obviously the Arrowhead logo, the helmet, the red tops has kind of become synonymous with the Chiefs. So maybe you see some other teams out there with less of that tradition more quickly moving forward. I know we had a discussion about, KU football hasn't had as much success lately, so they changed their uniforms up a lot because, there's maybe more leeway to do so. But there was one fan as we were walking out, Blair, that had a gold Chiefs helmet. I think he was getting signed with the Arrowhead on it. And I mean, I'm a sucker for gold stuff. That thing looked really sweet, kind of as he was walking out. But I do think the Chiefs are going to be more resistant to this sort of thing. Again, it's sort of dipping your toe in the water, and maybe once you dip your toe, you realize the temperature's not that bad and you can go a little bit more full force. But it seems like the Chiefs are pretty hesitant to do that. And like I said, a lot of that is, I'm sure, strategized from a big picture perspective, knowing just kind of the brand they have and wanting to keep it that way.
Tell you can sell a lot more merchandise, and I'm sure, and that's why there's any change really in uniforms or headgear. You can sell a ton more merchandise if you do that. The Chiefs have chosen not to do it. That's they honor their tradition. So I salute them for that. And again, I imagine this is a topic every year because somebody changes their uniform. But just there seemed to be an abundance of it this year. I noticed the teams like the Patriots and the Giants are going back to some throwback helmets for certain games this year. The Chiefs are wearing their throwback uniforms and helmets every game. It's what they wore 50 years ago. It's what they're wearing this season as well. So, but on to the sort of the more significant part of what Clark was saying. Let's go back to I think it was April when Mark Donovan was quoted as saying that the Chiefs are looking at exploring ideas and options for a new home for the future. And remember the stir it caused when he mentioned going across the state line to Kansas for a possible future home. But ever since then, first of all, the public feedback of that was pretty resounding. Don't you dare cross the state line. But the other was, how people couldn't imagine a Chiefs home not where it is now at Arrowhead. And I got the sense, can continue to get the sense, and heard today maybe most definitively that's probably the largest slice of the pie when it comes to options for future Chiefs home is Arrowhead Stadium in its present location, just fixing it up, making it better, improving it, and maybe that will end the conversation at some point. But Clark said options are continue to be open, but I can't imagine them being anywhere other than Arrowhead. But what the Truman Sports Complex will look like, that's another question.
Yeah, so two main things come to my mind with this. One, you talked about Mark Donovan, the president of the Chiefs, talking potentially, hey, maybe they're looking at other options or bids. And this legalized sports betting has just come out with the state of Kansas, and 80% of the money in that pot is supposed to go towards trying to woo a sports franchise to get to Kansas. So part of this seems to me, I'm going to use the word strategery, but leverage, right? I mean, at some point, you would think the Chiefs are going to be asking Jackson County, right? Jackson County taxpayers to help pay for renovations to an Arrowhead or whatever. And, a lot of times that is met with resistance and people saying, hey, you should not fund that on the taxpayer dollars. Well, if you have somebody a few miles away that says, we'd be happy to do whatever you guys want and put your stadium right here over by the Legends, that gives you a little bit of leverage in the situation. The second part of this, though, is Clark Hunt talked about this today. He spoke about this, and I have a story up on the site, kansascity.com, if you guys want to check it out. But he said his preference is to renovate Arrowhead Stadium. Now, certain voices in the room have more clout. If you are the chairman, CEO, owner, you have more clout. And we all have our own biases. Clark Hunt spoke openly today. He said that his father, Lamar, founded the Chiefs, said his favorite place in the world was Arrowhead Stadium. If that is what you're coming from, then why would renovating Arrowhead Stadium not be your top priority, thought, choice, everything? You know what I mean? Like, that means a lot to Clark Hunt. So I think those two things kind of come at me with this, is that if you are the Chiefs, you don't want to overlook options. You don't want to give away leverage when there's a place not too far from you that would remain the Kansas City Chiefs that really wants you, that would potentially take care of you and gives you leverage to the other side to say, hey, if you don't want to play ball, we can go over here. At the same time, the one who's in charge of the team is going to make the final decision. It sure seems like Clark Hunt knows what direction he wants to go if everything comes out the way he hopes.
It does. And also keep in mind that, as the Royals pursue a downtown baseball stadium, any money that they get from the city, the Chiefs get have access to as well. If the Royals are going to, I don't know, just a low ball here, get $300 million to from the city to move, the Chiefs are entitled to the same amount of money. So that's just the way the lease has been written. Okay, but hey, Jesse, before we get out, and I wanted to touch on the topic of Orlando Brown Jr. Dan asks about that. If no Brown, how did the Chiefs go? Well, the way they've been going for now is Roderick Johnson, kind of a journeyman player, is taking the snaps at left tackle for the Chiefs. Andy was asked about it today, even just how he's been performing. Got the passing grade from Andy, but Brett Veach gave you a little bit more insight into the Orlando Brown contract situation, and we have a story posted now on kansascity.com. Give us a little tease, Jesse. What's in that story?
Yeah, me and Herbie Tiopi for the Stars spoke to Brett Veach yesterday. He talked about sort of interesting how he hopes that they can renegotiate or continue to look into a long-term deal for Orlando Brown after this season. And we know with the franchise tag now, they are not able to try to negotiate a long-term deal now until the end of the year. But he still seems interested in pursuing that. And he also talked about how they are going to welcome Orlando with open arms once he does come to camp. And he says he wants to sit down with Orlando and have Coach Reed sit down with Orlando when he does make it to camp and be able to, basically say, hey, everything's good. Let's talk about how much we appreciate you, all those sorts of things, and keep everything professional. And, that sort of thing is what Brett Veach was talking about. They wanted to get the long-term deal done. It didn't happen. He said he understood it from Orlando Brown's standpoint, why he has advisors and agents, and sometimes these things don't work out. It's just business. But he does very much want to keep an open relationship, it sounds like, to keep Orlando Brown long-term in Kansas City, and wants him to play, with a free mind and to feel like his teammates, coaching staff, and front office love him here when he does show up to camp. So we don't know when that's going to happen. Brett Veach said he didn't know it was going to happen. Right now, Roderick Johnson is in that spot at left tackle. But to me, that indicates the Chiefs think that's going to be a short-term thing. Orlando Brown will show up here at some point. So if Roderick Johnson is in there week one, I think something's gone wrong to the plan. I still fully expect Orlando Brown will show up here at some point and be ready for that first game.
Very good. Okay. Hey, so we will wind it down here, but let me ask you this first, Jesse. Each of the first few days, we picked a first federal player of the day from camp. I'm going to go with Skyy Moore. Does that sound about right to you?
That sounds great. I would give it to him as well. People were asked about him, and I will give the asterisk, the gold star to Willie Gay, because it's so much harder as a defender to make the start of the game. And so for him to step in front of another pass and get an interception, he's been impressive in camp as well.
I'm going to go co-players of the day, sponsored by First Federal. So let's that'll satisfy it. Okay, hey, we're going to be back here same time tomorrow, 2:30 on Saturday, because the Chiefs are practicing. And when the Chiefs practice, we're going to talk to you and tell you what we saw and heard, and relay it all to you starting at 2:30. And listen, I got a little hint for you. If you're coming to training camp on Saturday, either leave early or come in behind the traffic, because it'll be the largest attended of at least of the first week, just because it's Saturday. The weather's supposed to be nice, and there will absolutely be a backup in traffic getting into Missouri Western at 8:45 to 9 o'clock. I think that'll be the peak traffic time getting here. So plan your travel accordingly, and we hope to see you up here tomorrow. For Jesse Newell, I'm Blair Kirkhoff. This has been Sports Beat Live, sponsored by First Federal, and big thanks to Monty Davis, of course, as always, for producing the show. We will talk to you again on Saturday.